What's doing, everybody? I'm Alec Lace. Thank you for watching First Class Fatherhood. Today's guest on the podcast is documentary filmmaker Gotham Chopra. Gotham is the co-founder of Religion of Sports along with Tom Brady and Michael Strahan. He has produced and directed some brilliant documentary features such as Tom vs. Time, Kobe's Muse, and even one about his legendary father, Deepak Chopra, titled Decoding Deepak. Deepak Chopra will be here in the following episode of First Class Fatherhood. I'm excited about that. Gotham Chopra has got a podcast of his own. We're going to get into that and so much more. Get down there, tap the subscribe button, hit the like, and let's jump into it right now with Gotham Chopra on First Class Fatherhood. Joining me now, First Class Father, Gotham Chopra. Welcome to First Class Fatherhood.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm really excited to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. Let's kick it off like this. How many kids do you have? How old are they?
I only have one. He's 13. He just turned 13. So that puts him in 7th grade right now.
Yeah, very cool. I got 4 kids. I got a 13-year-old in the mix myself there. What kind of sports or activities is he into?
He's big into Taekwondo. That's probably his big, he's a 2nd degree black belt. He's been doing it for a number of years. And then he's also gone through this huge growth spurt. So basketball is his sport. He's pretty good. But what's interesting is he basically, because of the pandemic, hasn't played competitively like 5-on-5 or anything like that for a couple months. We're all kind of waiting to see, because I think he's going to be pretty good. But, because he's big and sort of really filled out recently. But we're waiting for the other side of this thing.
Yeah, a lot of sports, a lot of everything been affected by the whole pandemic. So let's just do this here, Gotham. If you could, take a minute here to hit my listeners with a little bit about your background and what you do.
So I'm the co-founder of a company called Religion of Sports. We're a sports content media company. I co-founded it with Michael Strahan and Tom Brady. I'm a huge sports fan, always have been my whole life. But, when it comes to storytelling, I see sports as this incredible backdrop through which to tell stories, about human potential and, really the best versions of ourselves. That's what athletes are. And also all the lessons. I mean, we were just talking about my son, the thing I talk to my son about all the time is listen, it's the likelihood of him becoming a professional athlete is minuscule. But still, the things that it's the reason we put our kids in sports programs is because it's about, accountability. It's about failure. It's about resilience. Those are the things sports really teach us. And that's really at the heart of all the content we create. So I work with a lot of elite athletes from, I worked with Kobe to LeBron, Tom Brady. Obviously, we have a new project with Simone Biles. But the stories we tell are, grounded in what makes them human, not what just makes them mythic.
Yeah, documentaries are awesome, Gotham, and I know that too. It also, with my kids, it helps learn with teamwork, how to work well with others. It's great, even though, like you say, even if the kid's not going to be the next Kobe Bryant, at least he's getting in there and he's learning how to work with a team. There's a lot of fundamentals of life that can be learned through a sports team. So I agree with you there. And so along this journey that you've had here, about how old were you then when you became a dad, and how did becoming a father change your perspective on life?
So my son is 13 and I'm about to turn 46. So, early 30s is when I had my first son, or my first kid, my only kid. But, what I think I realized, is having a kid taught me to see the world outside of myself. It's just natural, that we see the world from this point of view. That's how I grew up. But I think once, you have a child, you start to see the world from their point of view. You start to certainly see the future. What's the legacy I want to, what's the kind of work I want to do? What kind of service can I be? Because, my child is going to inherit this. And so I think that's really what changed everything for me. I think a lot of people sort of put off having kids because they're I need to be ready. I need to it needs to be the right timing. And what I found is, I was one of those people too. I think we're all kind of those people, but I found things started to fall into place for me professionally, personally, because, the kid is the most important thing in your life. It becomes an organizing principle, right? You start making choices based on that. And so for me, it just was this incredibly, synchronicitous thing. Just everything started to fall in place after I had my son.
Yeah, well said. And that's one of the things I try to encourage a lot of the young dads that are about to be dads that listen to this show here. I try to bring on all these heavy hitters, a lot, even sports guys themselves, like Deion Sanders, Kurt Warner's been on a couple of times. These guys that have really just crushed it in life, and they say, you know what, despite these amazing accomplishments, it's really only been through the experience of fatherhood that I've gotten this sense of fulfillment in life. So that's really what I'm trying to cover here with the show, is to say it is something to embrace, not something to avoid. What would you say, Gotham, are the top values that you're hoping to instill in your son growing up?
So the things we talk about, we've talked a lot about it this year, obviously with the pandemic and with schools being shut down, remote learning, all this stuff, as we talk about resilience, like, again, using sports as the analogy, the best, baseball players in the history of hitting, they fail the majority of the time, the vast majority of the time. If you're a 300 hitter, that's Hall of Fame, standard. The other 7 times you're striking out, grounding out, flying out, whatever it is, you're quote failing. But it's the ability to get up, get back to the plate, take another swing. So we talk a lot about resilience. That's what I say is, like, we're taking away from this year. We're taking about resilience. I think the other thing we talk a lot about is, like, don't take yourself too seriously. Have fun. Like, what are the things you're most passionate about? And how do you really, like, focus on that? And, I've never been one of those parents that's really about, like, well, you gotta, study hard, and you have to, even the things that you hate, you have to really, I think focus and discipline is important, but I also think, like, joy, like, one of, I work with a lot with Tom Brady, and one of the things he says a lot, he's at his best when he plays with joy. So I think that's the other thing, is, like, just sort of have fun. And then I guess the third thing, like, my wife and I joke all the time about our sons, like, the one thing we want to do is, like, don't raise an asshole. Everybody can say that on your show, is, like, be compassionate, be empathetic, be giving, be grateful for everything you have, and be of service. And so, when you look out at the world and you look at, like, the many things that are going wrong right now, it's not someone else's problem. Like, how do you be of service? How do you recognize a problem and then be part of the solution? Let's say that's the other thing, we talk a lot about in our family.
Yeah, good stuff, Gotham. And I had the honor, I had a chance to speak with Tom Brady at Super Bowl 53 Media Day this year. It was the last 3 media days. This year was all virtual. I was in the virtual room with Tom. Didn't get a chance to speak with him this year. But that has to be quite an experience for you to work with these high-level performing athletes. Now, what was the genesis of the religion of sports, and what have you been able to personally take away from working close together with guys like Brady, Kobe, Biles? What's the takeaway been for you?
I mean, the origin of religion and sports is me. I basically grew up in Boston, Massachusetts as a diehard sports fan. I was the first one in my family to be born outside of the Indian subcontinent. So I'm first generation American. And for me, becoming a Celtics and Red Sox and Patriots and Bruins fan was part of, like, it was cultural assimilation. It was basically how I became American. And then my father is Deepak Chopra and has had sort of an illustrious career kind of in the spiritual realm and all of that. I used to tell him early on when I was a kid, is like, everything you talk about in wisdom traditions, like pilgrimages and cathedrals and mythology, that exists in sports. If you're a sports fan, you know what it's like to be part of a community bigger than yourself. The other side of that is the athlete, and you talk to some of the people you mentioned, the Kobe's, the Toms, LeBron, Simone, et cetera, they feel, they were put on the planet to do this thing. Like, it is the best version of themselves. So for me, look, I'm a huge sports fan, so I love working, and I love, like, being part of the electricity of, like, Tom Brady. We did a series a couple of years ago called Tom versus Time, which is following him as he pursued another Super Bowl at the age of 40, at that age when everyone says, no way you can do that. So, as a narrative, it's great. But also when I looked at that, it was like, and, I think it's like what you do great with this show. It's like, well, what can I learn from him that applies to my life? No matter what I do, I'm never going to be, the football player, or, I worked with Steph Curry a couple of years ago. I'm never going to be the shooter Steph Curry is, or the athlete. But, there are things that the way they attack their craft, that thing they were put on this planet to do, that I can apply to my life. I can even apply to parenting, something like that. Tom talks a lot about that himself, is like, what has he learned on the field? One of the things he talked about after losing to the Eagles a couple of years ago is, like, he realized for the first time, he's lost Super Bowls before, but he had never lost them as a father. And all of a sudden he had to, like, sort of see it from a different side, because his kids were looking to him emotionally, like, how is he going to react to this? And he's like, it was something that he thought a lot about, and it's why he was able to deal with that loss, and a year later, win again, because he was able to sort of say to his kids, it's like, hey, we did the best thing we could on the field. Now we have to learn from it and rebound, and he did. So, that's what I love about sports too. It's like, what is the wisdom we can mine from sports to the rest of our lives?
Yeah, good stuff, Gotham. And yeah, one of the difficult things this year, like I was able to speak to the players right after they stepped off the field from playing in the Super Bowl, and I talked to a few of the guys that lost it. So I asked them, like, what's the takeaway here from this loss that you could teach to your kids? Like, I always try to relate my content back to fatherhood and stuff. So difficult moments, but it's usually where those are the best. That we learn best when we fail. It seems that way to me. So. And I love what you do here. It kind of reminds me of like Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, who gathered all the 500 of the world's biggest successors and it figured out what is the formula to this success. It's kind of like that. If we could tap in to these athletes and not necessarily become the next LeBron, but find out what it is. They leave these clues behind that lead to their success. So I think it's awesome to get that insight, like with the Tom versus Time, and just to get a chance to see inside the mindset of these guys, because when they are on top of their game and it all works together, it's incredible to watch. And just pulling it back into you as a dad here, then Gotham, what type of disciplinarian are you as a father, and is that different than the discipline style that you grew up with?
Yeah, I'm not hardcore. I'm not, I grew up, in a pretty traditional immigrant family, and then I went to a very traditional school. I would say, having moved to the West Coast now, we're probably more on the progressive side of the spectrum. I think I believe in setting expectations, with my son, but really, and especially at this age, now it's his responsibility. And like, when he doesn't sort of hit those expectations, sure, it's disappointing to us, but it's really like, it's making him accountable to himself, to his friends or teammates or his teachers, etc. So we're very much into, especially again this year, like creating a certain amount of structure and then letting him kind of have the freedom to navigate within that. But like, we're one of those parents is like, you set up your chores and you set up your, these responsibilities, and only once you're able to, if you're able to do that, then you can kind of play the video game, screen time, etc. But we're not hardcore. I've never been like, too much of a disciplinarian. It's really like empowering him and helping him make the right choices and owning them.
Yeah, good, well said. Yeah, the screen time has been just so hard to control this year with the pandemic, because I felt like my wife and I had a good gauge on this right beforehand, and now it's just, now they're on the social media, not social media, but they're on their computers, their laptops for school. It's become a little bit more hard to kind of gauge all that stuff. But what about for your son? How has it been for him? Like, does he get a chance to be around these guys when you're doing the work? Has he been around Brady and get a chance to be around? I would imagine it's got to be a great experience for your son. What is his response to a lot of your work, and has he seen the documentaries?
Yeah, he loves it. He's a huge sports fan. I never really pressured him to like to necessarily love sports or necessarily love the teams that I love. I grew up in Boston, but I haven't really lived there for more than half my life. And he's a kid who's, grown up in Los Angeles. And I told him, like, you can be any team but the Lakers. You just can't be a Lakers fan or a Yankees fan. But other than that, you can be anything. And he's actually, I obviously, from watching games with me, he's become a pretty diehard Boston fan, even though he's never lived there. But yeah, look, I think also, I think what I do is, it's not just like the filmmaking, the storytelling, it's the relationship building. So Tom has become, a partner in the company, a good friend, Steph Curry, working with him. So these are relationships, and part of, building a relationship is like, I know Steph's kids, Steph knows my son, stuff like that. So yeah, it's been great. And I think the best part for him is to see, wow, like these amazingly successful athletes who do these incredible things and win championships, like, look how hard they work. They don't just show up. And two, like, oh, by the way, they're real human beings. They're also dads. They're also, like, they have other aspects of their life, and they have to learn how to balance all of those things. So even when you have success at the highest level, it doesn't mean anything if you have ruined relationships all over. And so I think he's seen, in particular, some of the people I've worked with, they're really good guys, good people, and they balance their lives,
Yeah, right on with that. Religion of Sports also has a podcast. What is the podcast all about? Where can the listeners or hear when they tune in?
Yeah, so we have a podcast called Now for Tomorrow that launched a couple months ago now. Actually, when the pandemic first started, which was really about like in this situation where we all have to peel back, be socially distant, be remote. Like, what can we learn? What can we take with us to the other side of this? We're also launching a whole bunch of podcasts in the next few months that really are kind of more along the lines of like the storytelling that that we do in the video side. But you can find, all our social handles on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and find out more there.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I'm going to drop a link in the description of this podcast episode so my listeners can get over there, check it out, check out more about you. What other kind of plans or projects or goals you have for this year? I mean, I know we got the Simone Biles coming up. The podcast's obviously coming up. What other kind of goals or plans do you have for yourself for the future?
So we have another big project we're doing with Tom Brady called Man in the Arena, which is really looking back at the 20 years of New England, the 9 Super Bowl seasons, and having him break down again, not just what happens on the field, but what was he able to learn from those incredible runs that made him not just a better athlete, but a better father, better husband, better friend, etc. So that's a big, exciting series, and now it was originally 9 episodes. It's now 10 episodes, courtesy of his last Super Bowl a few weeks ago. And then we have a whole bunch of stuff we're building out more on kind of the social side, digital side. Like I said, launching all the podcasts. So the company's really growing, which is exciting because it started as simple ideas. Like I called it Why Sports Matter. Sports is a language through which to talk about the things that are most important to us. So whether it's on the human potential side, social justice, which has become, something that, has been talked about through sports for decades, but certainly in this moment, I think we're using sports as a language to talk about social justice, et cetera. So, there's an endless series of stories. The Olympics is something, the Simone story was supposed to obviously launch last year for the Olympics, but now it's sort of extended into this year. And I think it's, for Simone, her biggest battle was always herself, her mental health, about her mental game, which athletes talk about a lot. And I think that's, just something that's intensified over the last year as she's had to push back. So pretty compelling story, incredible athlete, and someone we're excited to sort of work with.
Yeah, awesome stuff, Gotham. Very exciting. And the last thing I'm going to hit you with here, I love to ask all the dads that get on the podcast, what type of advice do you have for that new dad or for that about to be father who's out there listening?
Have fun. It is the greatest adventure. And no matter what kind of advice you've heard from someone like me or anyone else, it's uncharted. It's completely uncharted. But I think if you do it with devotion and you do it with, love and compassion, the sort of payback is unlimited. And so, have fun with it. It's the most precious thing. Be compassionate and, embrace it as the adventure that it really is.
Yeah, very well said. I love the message. It's been a lot of fun for me. I'm going to say, Gotham Chopra, you're a first-class father all the way, and thank you so much for giving me a few minutes of your time here on First Class Fatherhood.
Thanks, man. I enjoyed it.